Hello and welcome to the Bournemouth podcast. I'm Michael Curzon and I'm very pleased to be joined today by the leader of the Social Democratic Party, William Clouston, who is fresh actually from BBC Politics. We've just been talking about the fact that with the launch of your manifesto and generally with the election campaign, the mainstream media has finally been forced to take a bit more notice of what you're doing. So, what is it that they've been asking you, and what are the main points you've tried to get across to them?
Well, hi, Michael. Great to be on again. Yeah, it's been good fun because the SDP's strategy to get better known. An election is a perfect vehicle for it. So we knew that it was a great opportunity for us, and the main thing was to get the 91 candidates in England to get the party election broadcast. So we got that, and it was a tremendous effort to get all those candidates across the line and get 122 in the whole country. So yeah, the great thing is then after doing that, people like the BBC, who I often struggle to get on, actually email you and say, where is your manifesto launch? Because they have to cover it by law. So I had great fun, Michael, and I got the email from Westminster, the BBC, and of course, I thought what would be great fun is to have the manifesto launch in a working men's club in Leeds to get them up there, which we did. And they were very kind and they turned up and they filmed it. And then the following day, to my amazement and delight, they covered it on the Today programme and on the BBC News throughout the whole day and into the evening. So, 1 o'clock news ran it with clips, 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock. So, it really does ram home to you the the nature of the heavy lifting that the national broadcaster does. Because as you know, I've done loads of Talk TV and quite a bit of GB News, and so that environment, those pools know about us. But after doing the BBC, I had friends in the village, saying, "Oh, I saw you on telly," or old friends from university emailing me and saying how wonderful, So it was great. So the I mean the manifesto is called Homecoming, and
Hmm.
basically it's about what the SDP is about, which is faith, flag, and family. It's about um, treating the country as a home, not a shop. My criticism of the Tories is they think it's a shop and everything's for sale and they flog it off, and the Labour and the Progressives think it's some sort of charity. Think that our nation is there just to serve other interests and award people atonement and reparations for our past. So this is the basic criticism, and most of the public are on our side. This is our home. We're building our lives, and if you think about it like that, you cherish it, you protect it, you look after it, you curate it, and that's what we're on about. So we called it homecoming for lots of reasons, and there's loads of resonances. There's also a big resonance with our housing ideas and about the idea of reshoring industry, and also even politically homeless people. So I love the idea of homecoming as a title. We got a good graphic on the front, which is
Hmm.
a sort of place in the Yorkshire Dales, which is a road that'll take you home. So yeah, no, I'm very happy with the way it's gone with our scarce resources and so on. We're making some good progress.
Yeah, and there's plenty of people involved. So there's how many seats are you actually running in there? I remember you said
Yeah,
it's and
122. So it's a little bit patchy. I mean, it's a couple in Scotland, and disappointed that we didn't get one across the line in Wales. Though we did have one, but he pulled out. But Yorkshire's very strong. North East is very strong. 10 candidates.
yeah.
London did well. There's some great candidates in the southeast and the southwest and in the Midlands. So a really nice national showing for us. Yeah, and we'll enjoy it and see. I mean, I think our aim before Galloway came along,
Yeah.
and I don't know what you think. You can let me know, but is Galloway a full spectrum political party? But I mean, it's an odd, his form of politics is not dissimilar to ours, absent the Arab nationalism. So it's a curious one. But I mean, if you say he is a full spectrum party, then unfortunately he probably will pip us to sixth place. We were hoping to come to sixth nationally. I think we'll probably come to seventh, which still is very good. It's like a promotion for a football team.
Yeah, oh, definitely. I mean, on the Galloway point, I think it's the Workers' Party, isn't it? It has the potential of being a full spectrum party, but because of the point you raise, and I think the fact that that sort of seems to be prioritised above almost all other issues. It's always his main criticism of Keir Starmer is his position on what's happening in Gaza and Israel. So I think that sort of knocks them out of that position personally. Well, obviously, we'll only be able to tell that properly after election day. But I hope that I hope that that's true, definitely in terms of what
Well,
that the SDP. But I also think it is just based on its pushing of that issue.
yeah, I think it's. I mean, let's not spend too much time on Galloway, but I mean, it's a curious one because it distorts their offer to such an extent. I'm not sure it is a sort of broad mainstream party, which is what we're trying to be. A point I've made quite a few times in recent interviews is there isn't. As you know, the progressive cultural elite have views that are really quite extreme in some cases, and they're quite different from most British people. And I just don't think there's a major policy position where the SDP view on it doesn't carry over 50% of the vote of opinion. It does. I mean, absolutely. So that's one of the really big hidden strengths in the party is that we are, brave, I think, but also actually our views map the British public pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of our listeners will already know quite a lot about what the SDP stands for, not least because um, we've had quite a good relationship for a few years, been to a few of the conferences, and you've been helpful for us too. But for those who don't know so well, what are sort of the main standout points do you think from the manifesto which has been launched, Homecoming, which especially which resonate the most with the voters that you meet, basically?
Yeah, so let's try and let's go from the foundation. So
Yeah,
we're a party of the conservative left. So it's a blend really of fairly solid left-leaning economics. We believe that the state railways should be in public ownership. We believe that the utilities should be in public ownership and not flogged off to foreign investors in the states. And we believe in the state getting into state house building, reinvigorating that sector to try and help families have a chance to start a family, and that's the key thing. The housing crisis won't be solved without the state. So that's the sort of red bit. The blue bit, if you want to call it that, is a sort of cultural social conservatism, which is sort of fairly mainstream view. The family is the foundation of society. The nation state matters. National citizen preference, which some people find outrageous, but we think it's perfectly natural to put your own citizens first, and so on. So we know what a woman is and things like that. So these things are sort of fairly basic to us. So that's the blend. And one of the points I would make about the blend is that I think it does work. It's a better blend. It works. It's more coherent than, say, the position that, say, the modern Conservative Party takes, which is this awful sort of weird blend of saying you're conservative when you're pursuing economic policies which destroy towns and wreck your society and don't do anything for the family. So I just don't think that sort of Thatcherite zombie economics fits very well with family and so on. So that's why I think there is a gap, a sort of hidden gap for our type of politics. But yeah, I mean the very very broad policy offer in the manifesto is policies to support the family and parents raising children, policies to reindustrialize, increase manufacturing, reduce the trade gap, rebuild the tax base, ending mass immigration, not just for this parliament, but just, pretty much for good cessation in that. So, see where you can build from there. Train your own people. Creating a national care service is another important policy. Housing, we're very strong on. The policies on housing are excellent. So that's basically the offer. Yeah.
in terms of this election, so you would like to see the SDP come sixth, essentially, which puts it right there with the other parties, and I think hopefully with afterwards, especially with the election following that. would ensure that the presence which the SDP has been able to build ahead of the election with the increased broadcasting would carry over to that point, I should imagine, because it'd be more of an issue. But what's your view of, I mean, obviously polling is almost always not worth paying too close attention to, but what's your opinion of what is likely to happen at this election, and what's your view of that as well? If it is to be a Labour government and a large Labour government, are you as concerned about that as people like Peter Hitchens are, who is so concerned that he sort of reversed on his view of wanting to destroy the Conservative Party at this point? Or do you think points like that might be being over-egged somewhat, particularly by people who want the Conservatives to do quite well, not listing Hitchens among them?
Yeah. I'm sort of slightly pulled in two directions on this because if you pay attention to the polls, and actually if you speak to Tory friends, who some of whom are knocking on doors, it's extremely hostile and it's very bleak for them. And in theory, I mean, if anything like the polling that's being done were replicated in the general election, they really would be destroyed. I mean, 100 seats or lower, But something tells me something. I'm 60 next year, and I've seen a lot of elections. Something tells me that even an awful duopoly party will muster um, about 26%, probably minimum. I do find it very, very, very difficult to imagine the Tories can't get 26, 27%, which is pretty much Labour's nadir in 1983. They got 27, and the SDP Liberal Alliance got 25 and a half. So, and they're abysmal. And I think, it could happen. No one knows, do they? But when it comes to it, I can't see the Tories scoring less than 25, 26%. And if they do that, they should get, on the electoral dynamics, they should get about 150 seats. And I think that's the lower end of what I would imagine. I think they're more likely to get 200 seats.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think that's what my gut instinct tells me. And on reform, I don't know. I mean, I've got to be reasonably careful because they're still our electoral pact partners, but we do have, obviously very big differences with them on economics. But I don't know. I mean, they have to be given credit. I mean, Farage has to be given credit for coming in and throwing a great big rock into a rather boring election campaign, and it's interesting. And he will convene and has convened. And there was a crossover poll yesterday, which put them ahead of the Tories, but just an outlier. It was only one. So it's an interesting one. I think Labour will win. I think Labour's support is quite soft, though. I think it's I mean, Starmer hasn't told us anything about what he's going to do, and not being the Tories is sufficient. But just to get to your second part of your question about whether I agree with Peter Hitchens. No, I don't. I just don't. I mean, I've read him on this and I know what he's saying, but I disagree with him because I think sometimes, and by the way, I think Labour very possibly will be even worse than the Tories, but I'm afraid sometimes you have to go through a worse situation before you can get to some sort of redemption or rectification of a situation. So I think what will happen is Labour will get in. It's a bit of a hospital pass election to win. The public finances are in disarray and public services in disarray. So I think by the end of the decade, they'll be absolutely desperately unpopular. And I think a lot depends on whether we on our side, as opposition parties, can really get some sort of joint platform to change the voting system and change politics for good, as they say. I think if we can, then I think you could get an absolute, blow away election in 2029 that would change it for good. And I'm speaking to them, and I'm never gonna back down from our beliefs on economics and things in the state. But I think I'm willing to talk to anyone that will try and change, the system away from the duopoly.
No, 100%. One of the points that interests me with reform, I mean, I've been really scratching my head this election time, I have to be honest. I've not voted before. Um, there's not an SDP candidate in my seat, I should say.
Apologies.
No, that's fine. And I understand the Hitchens line, but after so many years of believing that a real political goal for people on our side is at least first to destroy the Conservative Party, I find it too difficult to spin round on that, as silly as that may be. But on reform, obviously, a big credence on.
Can I just come in, Michael, on that?
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. I think for all of us that want a Conservative Party, I totally agree with you. We'll never get it if you allow this awful entity to swallow up and steal the air.
Hmm. No, I do agree. I don't really completely understand the change of line on this. And I mean, there is obviously increasingly the reform is using the Tory line in reverse, that a vote for the Tories is a vote for Labour now, which I'm not sure how much I believe, but it is a tricky one. I am concerned about a number of the policies which we know that Labour will bring in, especially on votes for 16-year-olds, say, and obviously all the net zero talk, and on issues like gender. I think it will be particularly dangerous. But I do think you're right when you say that after 10 years they'll be worn out. They'll be so disliked by
5 years.
5 years,
5 years.
I think. 5 years.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Hitchens' view is that once they're in, they'll be in forever, even if not actually,
No.
but because of constitutional change, um, their domain will continue. But no, I
No,
do.
I think can I chip in there? No, I think he's
Yeah,
wrong
cool.
about that. As you know, I admire Peter a great deal, and I think he's right about a lot.
Yeah.
But no, I think he's wrong about that. I think what's happening, my reading is that politics, as we go into sort of late stage liberalism in the West and institutional rot and decay and so on, cultural decay, it's becoming increasingly volatile. And what I pick is that the first past the post system has failed to deliver, okay, which is what it's meant to do, failed to deliver a firm result in 2010, 2015, 2017, and then resolved the Brexit issue in a clanking victory, a landslide, and then we'll reverse that completely, and then we'll destroy the Labour Party in the next election. I think that's on the cards. So, but I think that's a massive opportunity if we on our side, and I'm talking about Conservatives as well. I mean, you know, I don't really have to name them, but there's 3 or 4 Conservative MPs that former MPs that we really like a lot and we talk to
Mm.
a lot.
Yeah.
And it's really up to us to try and get a opposition coalition working somehow. And if we do get the ducks in a row, I think, as I say, I think 2029 election or 2028 Labour could be absolutely destroyed,
Mm.
just like the Tories.
One point I want to make on reform, or something to ask you about. Obviously, you talk about the divergence on economic issues. This isn't something I know whether it's true or not, but it's something I'm skeptical of. Is reform's social policy as well? It's not something beyond immigration and patriotism, borders, things like this, that I think they talk about too much. There was a brief mention in the seven-way debate last night with Farage about the family, which is, I think, the first time it's really been mentioned by reform, at least on such a large scale in the campaign so far. And we
I
know
wonder
that,
why.
well, quite, yeah. And there's obviously, I think, is a has long been a supporter of, say, legalization of cannabis, and other policies in this line. I always remember when I was first interested in politics and followed UKIP for a short while, hearing Nigel Farage being pushed by the BBC on one of its candidates, who I think had been involved in some way in the porn industry, perhaps a producer or an actor or whatever. And Farage's response to this was, well, we're not Puritans here, we're not Cromwells. This is perfectly fine in a modern world. And I remember then it sort of struck me as being slightly strange for a party which was appealing to conservatives. So I just wondered what your view is on reforms, sort of credentials on the social and cultural conservative side of politics.
You know what, Matt? I don't really know.
Mm.
I'm not really sure. I certainly think that they have a lot of very, strong Thatcherites on economics in the party. In
Yeah.
fact, the London mayoral candidate Howard Cox, was saying that clearly, and that's a point of difference. I mean, we pursued the alliance, the electoral pact, basically on the fact that we overlapped on three areas that were clear. I mean, we obviously both Brexit supporting parties believe Britain's good enough to govern itself. That's the first thing. Second thing, we both agreed on voting reform, and the third thing is that we both thought mass immigration and loss of border control on the south coast and so on was a very serious matter. But that really we didn't get any further than that on. But to be fair, I thought that was sufficient
Yeah, I see that.
and those are very important things, and I thought it was sufficient to work together, which we did. And we never. Richard was very grown up about it in all the negotiations. He was very quite generous to us, really, as the smaller entity in this, and said, no, it's fine. You've got your views on economics, and that's fine. He's very adult about it. I don't know Nigel as well, and I've only met him a few times. And we'll see what it is. I mean, the thing about the pact is we've been very keen to honour it, and we've honoured it. And I've taken a little bit of some scars on my back, but I still think it's the right thing to do. And if you believe in PR, you should do that type of thing. And I'm very relaxed about the differences. Really, I talk about them, but there are some similarities. But I don't. To be honest, I don't know. I suspect it's a fair mix. To be honest, I think the SDP anyway is pretty solidly socially conservative, and
Yeah.
Here we are.
I suppose the point is that there's a divergence within reform itself because it's not one of the main features of the party. So therefore, it's sort of slightly more lax in terms of who's involved in that sense.
Yeah, but I think in a way to broaden it, I think an even more interesting uh, fact is that and you must have picked up on this, is that when I speak to my Tory friends who are on our side, of sort of red blue Tories, um, uh, they are slightly despairing, really, of the fact that they're a small group now, with a lot of them are in the red wall, and they're a small group in the parliamentary party now. But if the Tory party gets wiped out to 150, do you realise what the complexion of that 150 will be? It will be incredibly socially liberal, economically liberal,
Oh yeah.
Knights of the Shires and the. I mean, they call themselves One Nation Tories, or whatever. But that's just ridiculous. I mean, I don't think particularly Disraelian. I don't. They're strange. They should be in the Lib Dems.
Yeah.
And
Some of them were.
Yeah. Or yes. Yeah. So but the problem is that on the dynamics is what you're going to be left with. Some very good people like Miriam Cates could lose her seat, and unfortunately, the Tory party you're left with to pick up the pieces is going to go around saying, "Oh, we were too harsh. We were too, too stringent on this and that," and just go towards sort of centrist dad. Well, that's going to get them nowhere. I mean, it's not an offer that's going to convene very much. So in a way that it's more interesting really on those questions on what will happen to the Tory party.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Jeremy Hunt has been, of all people, has been writing in The Guardian of all places about elections are only won on the centre. We shouldn't be moving further to the right as if they were already on that side. And you're right, I've written about what polling suggests, and obviously, again, there's difficulties with that, but what polling currently suggests will be the makeup of the party based on the candidates most likely to win after the election. And I mean, if it's bad now, it's certainly going to be far worse. And it is true, I suppose. Sorry.
It makes the Tory party unreformable.
It does. It does. And I mean, the unfortunate point is that the few better candidates within the party almost have themselves to blame, I think, for staying in it, for the fact that they'll lose their seats based on that. I mean,
it's a real tricky one. I think you've got to always remember that they have conservative associations that have worked for them, and they've got friendships as well.
Mm.
But it's the oldest one. I mean, it's like Henry Hill on he was on the panel on the talk, the Politics Live I've just done, and he said, yeah, William's right that the gap is there. That's where the gap is there. The red blue gap. But he said he'd be better off trying to be in reform. And no, it's completely ridiculous. I mean, I would have no chance if the whole SDP joined reform and tried to get them to nationalise the utilities or whatever. Or I know they've got a sort of halfway house policy in there, but more broadly on the stuff we believe in, it'd be a complete waste of time. And
Mm.
I've got massive admiration for Philip Blond and Maurice Glassman and the Blue Labour Red Tory projects, but they're admirable but marginal.
No, I
So
think
you've
that's
got to build it. I mean, Blue Labour can't get 122 candidates in a general election. We can. That's the difference.
the other main point I wanted to ask you about then is on electoral reform, and it's something I have to be honest. PR is something I'm slightly skeptical of. I used to be quite strongly opposed to it. I'm less strongly now, and actually, some of the other main writers at Bournebrook have long been opposed to it and have started to change their minds. I think the main reason is that the arguments for first past the post, the strong government being the main one, has been left slightly questionable
Yeah.
after recent elections, and it becomes more difficult to argue that that's just because of the political parties on offer, which I think is usually one of the responses to that. So I wonder what your sort of pitch is essentially for PR for those like me, admittedly, who are a little bit unsure.
Well, first, can I commend you on being unsure? I'm an 80%, 20% PR
Right.
advocate
Hmm.
because I think any thinking person should be aware that you're giving something away if you change the system. I
Yeah.
mean, firstly, there's an elegance to the present system in that the present system sorts itself out
Hmm.
culturally. What happens is you have 650 seats, and the system does not tell people or the seats or it doesn't advocate in that way. It's just a system. You have a series of representatives, and if you're not good enough to get elected, you won't. So there's an elegance to that. There's a simplicity to that, and the link between the member and the geography is there, and all that.
Hmm.
And a point that Peter Hitchens makes actually is that it sets up a sort of catharsis in a smashing of a flushing of a political class that's got it wrong.
Quite.
So and I think the expression Peter says, he quotes someone, doesn't he? It's within that inch that we live. There'd be an inch of difference between the Labour Party and the Tory Party, but it's within that inch we live. Now I get all that, and I think if you're a thoughtful person, you should get that, and you should see the constitutional conservative side to that. Dr. Kevin Hickson, who's an academic I admire a lot.
Hmm.
He's a friend, former SDP chairman and former Labour candidate in parliamentary elections. Yeah, he's a conservative on this, and he makes his case very strongly. He said the SDP should be supporting him first past the post and should win the election outright. So I get a lot of that, and I think that's why I'm 80% in favour. But I'm 80% in favour because I don't think you'll never get the Commons looking anything like public opinion. The difference is the values, the attitudes that are out there in the country are really not represented at all, even vaguely in the Commons. And obviously the Brexit vote proved that, because the Brexit vote was the mainstream majority opinion. Would have been much bigger majority, by the way, if there wasn't so much Project Fear about it, and
Oh, yeah,
all of the
absolutely.
leagues hadn't lined up against it. But anyway, that was the mainstream position, and it was represented by no parties bar the DUP. So, and it's one of the reasons that Brexit has struggled. Let's put it that way.
Right.
With the Tories, it was never Tory party policy. People forget that. So, yeah. So there you go. I think, as you said in the first question, I think anyone thinking we're well governed, I mean, which is not. I mean, we're just not well governed at all. And anyone that thinks that the supposed benefits of first past the post are delivering those benefits again is going to be disabused.
Right. But the one point I'd say in response to the idea of, which is true, of the extent to which Parliament, as it is, doesn't represent the views which are held across Britain, is, I mean, this perhaps is wishful thinking, but it looks as though that could be about slightly to change, at least with the Tory party going, and setting forward to the election after that with reform, uh, hopefully getting more seats, perhaps with the SDP having more of a role in mainstream politics as well. Do you see that it's possible that not this time round, obviously, maybe not even the time after that, but perhaps after a few electoral cycles, Parliament could become more representative now that the Tories will be gone, and as you said earlier, that Labour could even be struggling within as little as 5 years as well.
I don't think we know that the Tories are going to be gone. I mean, I think one of the features, one of the key features of first past the post. I mean, I want to talk about gatekeeping and filtering in a second, but one of the key features of first past the post is that as a system, it protects, it shields the weaker of the duopoly for as long as it takes for that weaker party to recover.
Mm.
That's what happens. So what happens is in 83, in sort of 83, when the Labour Party was trounced, it gave them, it protected us, it locked us out, it locked the SDP out for long enough for the Labour Party to recover slowly and then win under Blair. That's how it works. So I mean, I would say, and I'm an optimist. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think we could get
No.
the change that we seek. But I think the if I was going to put a probability on it, I'd still say it's 60-40 against, or 50-50 at least. The probability is the Tory party gets 150 seats and just struggles and eventually gets back to power.
Right.
And actually, it doesn't, under the system, it doesn't have to be terribly good. Do you think Starmer's party is terribly good?
No, I think that I think one of the big differences is that the Tories don't really know what it is that they want to do. They don't have many principles. Where I think that Labour will, and I sort of hope they will, in a sense, be inefficient. But I do think they have more of a driving principle, which will perhaps make them slightly more
Yeah,
active.
maybe. I think they do. I think they it hasn't had very much coverage. Well, Eric Kaufman wrote a piece in the Spectator about it today. Haven't had a chance to read it, but I pretty much know what he'd say. I think one of the one of the most sinister and alarming aspects of the Labour programme is this Race Equality Act,
Yeah,
which will mandate some really quite extreme and potentially very divisive and harmful racial hierarchy reporting in large firms. I mean, Labour want, in their manifesto, they want large firms to be under an obligation to make a racial pay gap hierarchy. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, one of the what a precondition in a multiracial, multi-ethnic society is a degree I've always argued for. A degree of civilized toleration of differences. What Labour are going to do is make companies make a rank order of their employees by race and how much they earn. And if if you're a British Hindu and you or a British Chinese person and you're at the top of that and you're another group and at the bottom of that, you're going to, it could potentially cause great resentments.
hmm.
And I think it's an extraordinarily foolish thing to do. And it really alarms me. I think the Labour Party on this are just not only wrong, but dangerously wrong, potentially dangerously wrong. And so I'm very worried about that.
No, I do quite agree. The last point then, because of timings, is another electoral point actually, which I'm interested in, sort of a constitutional point, which I'm not 100% sure what the SDP policy is on this, is the House of Lords.
Yeah.
I know that there's desire for change there, but I wondered in what way you would like to reform the institution.
Yeah, well, this is quite a nice example of the SDP being a democratic party with members having full membership rights and so on and so forth. So um, I am like David Owen. I believe that the House of Lords is wrong in principle and should be abolished. It's an absurdity. Um, Having said that, I acknowledge the fact that it has worked reasonably well, and that there are some excellent people in it, and there's some excellent hereditaries actually, but there's some excellent others. So I take all those points, but something in me just says that you can't really have a democracy that has a a. I mean, funnily enough, I think the hereditaries are better than the cronies.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
So I get all that, but I'm not. I haven't really wavered on it, and I've always argued for abolition and then a unicameral structure. So anyway, so the SDP conference, the conference voted on. I think it was Jake Painter put a motion up saying that we were against this. We were more constitutionally conservative, and we want to retain the Lords. And under the SDP's rules, you have to get 75% in an AGM to hold it. The conference floor voted 66% against my position, and I felt morally bound to review the policy, which I did. And we now have a policy of retaining the House of Lords, but having a slimmed down version of 500 members that are better resourced, and have a committee to sort of police their quality and political impartiality and so on. So that's what we come up with, and I'd argue for it. As I say, I think we could. Let's not pretend. I think it's very childish to pretend that you agree with everything in a manifesto. I'm quite happy to tell the story of it, and that's the SDP's policy: is to retain the House of Lords and reform it.
Yeah, no, I think that's, I mean, there's obviously various arguments about the House of Lords, one of them abolishing it. Another one, which I actually find worse than the idea of abolishing it, is to make it wholly democratic, in which case I think it's almost pointless. Yeah, it ends up repeating the problems that we see in the House of Commons as well. You just have it twice as bad. So
well, when we looked at it, Michael, I looked at it and we wanted an English Parliament, you see, because then England's left dangling, and that's our policy. So you can't. It was partly space. I don't think a powerful English Parliament and two chambers in Westminster. And I looked at unicameral structures, and they really do work. I mean, a lot of states have unicameral structure right at the top, and you have an enhanced committee system to scrutinise legislation. It goes around, and it's fine. So you could have had that, but so there we are. If you have internal party democracy, you've got to live by it.
Quite. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there then because of time. We've gone over, as we said before, that we thought we might. But one thing to ask then at the end is we've obviously got the manifesto there, which people can find online. Homecoming. There's a party broadcast at some stage. When's that?
So the party election broadcast is on Tuesday, the 18th of June, on BBC and ITV, and it's basically after the news. It's after the 10 o'clock news, 10:55. The Channel 5 broadcast of it, I think, is on the 28th. I haven't set anything with Channel 4 yet, but they'll have to show it as well.
Good.
So yeah, I'm very excited about it. It was a lot of fun, and I hope people enjoy it. It's a little bit different to most people's broadcasts.
Well, naturally it should be, I suppose.
Yeah.
Shame if it was the same. Well, I look forward to that then. And thanks a lot for your time today. I've enjoyed that.
Pleasure.
Talk to you
again.
As
always.
Hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Best of luck, Michael. Cheers. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.